Welcome again to another Discover Trempealeau County show. As you know, we've been traveling around the county, finding interesting people and the interesting things that they do, and we got an exceptional good show here today. Down in the southern part of the county, we're going to be visiting with Phil Lunde, and he's got the only chestnut grove. It's an old grove, and we'll be talking about that. We're sitting right in front of one of the trees. You can see the leaves and so forth behind us, and we'll be talking about this chestnut grove. And it's one of the few that exist maybe in the whole area. Yeah. And I'd like to ask you a few questions before we start. Is this your home farm?
Yeah, not the home farm. I was born in La Crosse, and then my dad purchased this farm in 1952. And we moved up in 1956.
So, and your father, Einar, I knew him, and we were talking a little before the show, and I believe that walnut we got in our yard was from your father. I remember coming down, and we put it in the back, in the trunk of the car, and brought it home, and boy, I tell you, the squirrels really love that at this time of the year. Now, your father, were these chestnut trees that we're sitting in front of and that we'll be looking at and talking about today, were some of those here when your father bought the farm in 1952?
Yes, the trees are here, but we didn't realize what we had. This was all this area in here was brush and young growth, and so we started clearing it out. And then we found these trees back in here. And one day, a person from the DNR stopped in and said, "Do you realize what you have here?" And we said, "Well, we really didn't know what they were." And he said, "Well, they're American chestnuts, and they're extremely rare." And so he started us off and leading us to places that were in need of the chestnut seed, and that's how it all started.
Well, let's talk a little about these chestnuts. They were quite a tree in early America. And they were scattered throughout the East. They were all the way from Maine to Georgia. I read an account from the internet that Wade had dug out that in the Appalachian Mountains, about 1 out of every 4 trees were chestnuts. And do these trees have kind of a white flower?
Yes, they do. They got what they call a catkin, and it's a long, stringy white flower with the most terrible odor you'd ever want to take, because about in the middle of July when they're in full bloom, it's pretty hard to take.
Well, it was said that when they were in bloom, the Appalachian Mountains looked like they were covered by snow because of all the flowers. And so how do you think, what happened to the chestnut trees in the East?
Well, the way I heard that there was a shipment of some plants that came out of Japan in about the 1920s, somewhere in there. And in that shipment was this blight that attacked the American chestnut. And within 25 years, the whole eastern coast was gone.
Yeah, I read where there's like 9 million acres of chestnut trees. 9 million acres. 1 out of every 4 tree was a chestnut. And once the blight came in, I think the earliest that came in was 1904, and they started attacking, and it just kept spreading. And in, like you say, 40 years are gone. How do these survive?
Well, this farm was homesteaded by a gentleman by the name of Oscar Beardsley, and he came out of Pennsylvania. and he brought a pocket full of chestnuts with him when he came to homestead this area. And he planted them, and this is what you see. And I think the reason that they survive so well here is we've got the westerly winds are keeping the blight away, and we've been really fortunate.
So my understanding is, we'll talk about these chestnut trees a little bit later too. Before we go there, back when I was in grade school, I remember a poem. It was, and I didn't know who it was written by, but wait again, pull this out of the internet. It's amazing. I'm illiterate, and it's by Henry Watford Longfellow. It says this was out east somewhere. Oh, Cambridge, Massachusetts. It says under a spreading chestnut tree, the village smithy stands. The smith a mighty man is he, with large and sinewy hands, and the muscles of his brawny arms are strong as iron bands. Well, I remember reading that and learning about it, maybe even memorizing a little of it in grade school, and that's more than maybe close to 65 years ago. And they were talking about chestnuts, but this was written before the chestnuts were wiped out by the blight out there in Massachusetts. So do you know the year that this Beardsley, did you say, that he came and did he homestead this farm?
Yeah, he came in 1870 and homesteaded not just this farm, the farm also north of me and the farm to the east of me were all the same property at one time.
So he brought these nuts with him that really preceded the blight. Yeah. We preceded the blight that came in. It came in from Asia, and so actually these trees would be subject to blight then, wouldn't they?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we're just fortunate. I mean, I've got blight in West Salem, which is maybe 15 miles as the crow flies. There's blight in Minneapolis. There's a lot of blight in Michigan, but we've been lucky.
Well, how is blight? What's the characteristics of the blight? Have you ever seen a tree that had blight? I know they all died, but how does the blight attack the trees? How does it start? How does it look?
I've never seen it actually in a tree. I've seen pictures of it, and it's a bright. You'll never miss it. It's a bright blaze orange fungus, and it grows completely around. It girds the tree and goes through the bark, and that's what kills the tree.
Well, does it stop the nutrients from going up into the tree?
Yes, once the bark is destroyed, that's it.
Well, over this period of 40 years or whatever it was, that it killed all the chestnut trees that we had in the eastern United States, it must work pretty fast.
Apparently so, yeah. I don't think it took more than about 25, 30 years, and they were all wiped out in the east, and that's fast.
What is your theory then for these surviving the blight? They're subject to blight. If the blight occurred, they're not resistant, in other words, to blight, so they would die of blight. So what has kept the blight away? Have you been pretty careful about, let's say, people coming in and that sort of thing too?
Yeah, we watch the people real close. If anyone comes in from West Salem, I don't let them on the grounds. Or if they come in from any of the eastern states, in which we have, off and on, people come to visit, and they hear about this, and they say, oh, I remember my dad or my grandfather talking about the chestnut trees, so they want to see them. And not if they're from the eastern states, but others can come and visit. But, yeah, and birds, too. Birds will carry it, not just people, or come on the wind.
So do you have a lot of visitors that stop by and look at the chestnut trees like Wade and I today?
Yeah, I do. And bus tours once in a while, too, will stop in.
I know we were here a couple of times, I think, with bus tours, and I know that you'd indicated you preferred that we just look from the bus.
Yeah, I don't trust anybody. But, yeah, most of the time I'll have the bus tour stop out there, and I'll go out with some chestnuts and some burrs and talk a little bit about it, and we do it that way.
Well, it's a rare sight, and it's a rare program here today, I think, because it's going to give most of us an opportunity to see something we've never seen before. Chestnut trees right here in Trempealeau County, of all places. Now, you said that the blight has taken over or has killed a lot of trees at West Salem?
Yeah, I think the whole grove at West Salem now has been affected by it. They don't die immediately. I mean, they last sometimes up to 10 years after they've caught the blight. And they've tried everything. They've cut them down and burned them to try to stop the blight, and they've painted them with some kind of whatever to stop it, some kind of a medication to stop it, and nothing has worked.
We're going to talk to you a little bit later in the program here, but there's a lot of research going on around the country. Even down Purdue in Indiana, they're doing research. All down Missouri, they're doing research, and other places. And they think they're close to building a resistant American chestnut tree that's resistant to the blight. Have any of those guys been in contact with you? Any people that are doing research and trying to bring back the chestnut trees?
Yeah, I've got. There's several people that come in, and in fact, as we go down the grove, you'll see some of the trees marked with a blue tag. That's some universities out east have brought, and those fellas, when they come, they're clean, and they're crossing the American chestnut with a Chinese chestnut, and then taking that seed, crossing it again with an American chestnut, taking that seed, crossing it again, and they do that several times until they've got a 90% American chestnut, 10% Chinese chestnut, and it's resistant to the blight.
Do you know if they're close to having perfected that?
They're working on it. It takes many, many years, but they're working on it.
Well, someday we might see American chestnut groves again. You know, yeah. We're sitting right in front of a tree. Let's just rip off one. You don't mind if we rip one? Well, let's take a look at the leaf. Maybe you could explain the leaves a little bit, what they look like. Wade, kind of hold them a little still, maybe against yourself, so Wade can get a good picture that isn't too shaky. And tell us about the leaves, and maybe tell us where the blossom occurs.
Okay, I don't see the spot. The blossom would probably be right in here, Wade. It comes out, and it's about 3 or 4 inches long. You'll always know an American chestnut, which is a member of the beech family, because of the saw edge you see on the leaf. The beech doesn't. The beech has a smooth edge. But if you find a chestnut tree and it's got this, you can believe that it's an American chestnut.
There are other chestnut trees then besides American that are resistant to the blight. Is that what you just said?
Yes, there are. There's a Chinese chestnut for sure.
I've heard of a horse chestnut.
Yeah, there's an Ohio buckeye. I think that's the horse chestnut too. And there's an Italian, and I don't know them all, but yeah, there's quite a few different chestnut trees. But this is how you determine an American chestnut. In fact, I have to send these once in a while to universities so they can see the leaf before they'll accept the nuts as being true American chestnuts.
Well, that's really interesting. That's a first opportunity for me to see that close up. Well, we're talking with Phil Lunde here, who has the only chestnut grove in Trempealeau County and way beyond. I guess the next one would be West Salem. Is that true? And that's going down with the blight.
Yep, that's kind of going downhill. It's a shame, but it's definitely got the blight. The West Salem Grove did have the largest chestnut in the state of Wisconsin, but that one caught the blight, and now mine have gone ahead. So now I have the largest tree.
Well, I think you said that you also maybe have the largest 4 in the state of Wisconsin.
Yeah, there's 4 of them that beat the other one. Yeah.
Well, Phil, we're kind of in the area of the historic American chestnut trees on the Phil Lunde farm here. We're looking at some of the original trees. And you mentioned before, but mention again when they were brought in and by who.
Yeah, it was. They were brought in by Oscar Beardsley in 1870.
And that's how many years ago?
That's 136, if my math is correct.
And there's some mighty big trees, mighty big chestnut trees here. How How big? How what? You've got the winning tree in Wisconsin, probably the United States, right next to us here. I wonder if we could just walk over that way a little bit, Phil, and take a little closer look at it. Wade is filming, and this is documented, as you told me earlier, as the largest tree in the state of Wisconsin.
Yep, this one has been measured and it's in the record book. And I can't tell you what the dimensions are, but I know it's 70 feet tall. And it's 136 years old.
So how did you know that? How did you know that history about the trees? He brought some nuts in a suitcase or something, and
Well, I actually got a letter one day from his granddaughter. And she had mentioned she had dates and times when he had arrived, and he said he had a bag full of American chestnuts with him.
you think these were original, all original, these trees right here that he brought in 1870?
Yes, this row right here, all the way down, there's about 15 of them. Yeah, those are the original trees.
And do you have any idea, how big a diameter this is? This looks like it's, boy.
Well, I'd say it's close to 5 feet in diameter. Yeah, they measure at 6 foot height, I think it is, and then they measure the circumference and the height, and there's some kind of a formula they use. But
I read in some literature that, the average was I'm talking about out east, was 5 feet in diameter and 100 feet high. And there were some that were even up to 9 feet in diameter. So these are mighty big trees.
yeah, if they live, they're telling me to 300 years. They got a lot of growing left. He's only halfway there.
You might not see any of them die.
Might not.
Well, we'll talk a little. Let's catch these ladies here. They're working. We want to talk a little bit more about the chestnut trees and the lumber and all that. But there's a couple ladies here that we want to introduce to the folks, and we feel kind of guilty, just standing up here talking, and they're doing all the work.
That's how it works.
That's how it works. Well, let's introduce this lady right here. Who are you?
Olin Lunde.
Phil's wife.
Yep.
He's got you pretty well trained, I think.
Yes.
And your name is?
Sharon Schindler.
Oh, just say that again.
Sharon Schindler, his sister-in-law.
And tell us what you're doing here. You're obviously picking up nuts, and I can see why you're wearing something on your knees, because these chestnuts. Maybe you could talk a little about that before we talk anymore. Here, Phil. Oops. Tell us about these things that the chestnut does grow in.
Yeah, this is the reason they wear knee pads. It's I show that to Wade there. The chestnut grows inside of a burr that's just like a sand burr, and as fall approaches, the burr opens up, and then the nuts fall out. And then we can pick the nuts. And that burr's supposed to stay up there for a little bit. But this year it's been different. I think they got a little dry. So the burrs and the nuts are all falling at the same time. So that's why we got to be kind of careful. They're real wicked.
Boy, they're real spiny, aren't they?
Yeah, that's just like a
You
sand burr.
want to go barefooted down in this area.
If you look
Look
at one under a microscope, one of these little burrs, they're even barbed. So if they go in, they can't come out. Now, that's probably telling us we shouldn't be messing with them, but that's the way it is.
Will they go through a shoe? Can they go through a shoe, do you think?
Definitely a tennis shoe, and once in a while a leather shoe. You bet. You got to be careful. You don't want them planted in your front yard.
Well, if we see Wade jumping around a little bit, we know what he stepped on.
Yeah.
Well, let's talk a little about your wife here. Now, if she's picking up some nuts, maybe we could grab a little out of her pail. You think she'd object to any of that, Phil?
She probably will count them.
And we have to hold them kind of still, and maybe Wade can do a little filming of the chestnuts. And so what's happening here? They're going down your grove, and you got quite a long grove here. Must be, 300 feet, I think, or more.
Yeah, be all of that.
And they find these chestnuts all along the entire grove.
Yeah, when it starts out, we have one tree way in the back there that starts first every year, and the nuts all fall off of there. Then the one up on the other end starts, and then the whole works. And they have different sizes. This is about the average. This tree right here has the largest of the grove. Trees on the other end, on the west end, have the smallest. Why? I have no idea.
Have anything to do with soil or anything like that, do you think? Or
Could very well be soil and moisture. Yep. And maybe because these are out in the open just a little bit more. They get a little more sunlight.
now these trees that we're looking at now that Wade is kind of filming over here, they're smaller than the ones we were just behind us that you mentioned that Mr. Beardsley brought in from Pennsylvania. Can you give us a little history of those trees?
Yeah, these that you see right here on the flat, my dad and I planted. In fact, at the same time, we planted everything to the road, and we had probably 100 trees in there. But we found out later that the American chestnut doesn't grow well on level ground. So after about 10 years of trying to get them to go, I finally took the tractor and had to pull them out because they got just too much moisture. They'd have to be on a little bit of a slope and light soil.
So you remember planting those. Now, how did you plant them? Did you plant them with a nut? Did you put a nut in some sand or something and germinate the nut and then plant the plant? Or how did you plant them?
We grew them in coffee cans in the house until they were little trees, just over the winter time. And then we planted them as seedlings that were probably about a foot tall. And they caught on well. They grew well, but like I say, they don't like flat ground, and they'd only get up to be about 4 or 5 feet tall, and then they'd branch out into like bushes. So we had to pull them out.
Do you do any like pruning or anything like that as they started growing? Did you have to do anything like that, or did they just grow naturally?
No, we didn't do any pruning. They are an odd tree, as you can see, the way the branches twist and around and things. But
I found this in one of the literature that Wade took out of the internet. It said native wildlife, from birds to bears, squirrels to deer, depend on the tree's abundant crops of nutritious nuts. Now they're talking about back when it was loaded with chestnut trees throughout the 9 million acres through the eastern part of the country. The chestnut was a central part of eastern rural economies. As winter came on, attics were often stacked to the rafters with flour bags full of the glossy, dark brown nuts. Spring houses and smoke houses were hung with hams and other products from livestock that had been fattened on the harvest gleanings. Now, what do you think that gleanings is? Is that what we're looking at? That spiny stuff was ground up some way, or?
I think they're talking probably about the nuts themselves as the gleanings. And I realized what happened because we have the same thing here. The squirrels eat them, the deer eat them, the wild turkeys eat them, raccoons, blue jays, and even the crows love them.
It says what wasn't consumed was sold. Chestnut was an important crop for many Appalachian families. As the year-end holidays approached, nuts were by railroad car full. Were shipped to New York and Philadelphia and other big cities where street vendors sold them fresh roasted on the street. Where do your nuts go, by the way, that are being picked here today?
Well, most of them go to universities and colleges for study so that they can try to find a disease-free variety. And a lot of them go to nurseries that sprout them out, grow them up to seedlings, and then sell them.
Well, I don't think we mentioned, but in some of this internet literature, there's a Dr. Jacobs, I think it is, out of Purdue, that's doing a lot of research. And I think you mentioned that he may have been here, or at least you sent some of your nuts from your original chestnut trees to Purdue.
Yeah, I'm sure someone from Purdue has been here. In fact, like I said, there's some little blue tags, and that was Purdue that put them out. They're going to come, they put them out, and then they come back in about 5 years, and then they come back in about 15 years, or something to do with the growth of the tree.
Well, he said in the article that he expected in 10 years they'd have a a blight-resistant chestnut. And his hope was that eventually they'll be repopulating, the East and the Midwest with chestnut trees. You're maybe playing a part in that.
Well, a little bit, probably. Yeah, when they go out to these universities, not only is the nut itself valuable, but the wood from the trees is valuable. They used it, for these rail fences, and they said there's rail fences out east yet that are 75, 100 years old that are still standing.
So they're somewhat rot resistant then. And they were used for furniture?
Furniture, yep, paneling. And just like I've had some sawed. I had a couple trees that went down, and I had them sawed up. They have a grain on them, much like an oak, but they're much more durable.
Well, very likely some of the original barns and houses that were built by the pioneer families probably used chestnut, especially out in the eastern areas.
Yeah, no doubt. I guess there's old barns out there yet where they're pulling the boards off of them and selling the lumber by the foot now.
Well, this is a magnificent grove you have here, and I think if Wade would spin and turn to the left a little bit, I think you told me earlier that you had planted some chestnut trees in this area that is not mowed. Is that true?
Well, what you see back here is squirrel plantings, and
oh, really?
Yeah, that's all squirrels, and natural plant. The nut drops on the ground and grows too, but there's probably a couple thousand trees back there.
Oh boy, and some of them aren't that old, are they?
No, some are. There's anything from a 1 foot seedling back there up to some that are maybe 1.5 foot in diameter.
Where it's a little crowded, do you dig up some of those seedlings for sale?
Yeah. I don't sell the seedlings, but I have been known to give a few away.
How long does it take you to pick this grove? How long with the two ladies? How long would it take them? Are they working here a week or a couple days or?
It doesn't take too long. You start out kind of slow, but you can finish the whole project in 2 weeks.
But then they don't all ripen at one time, do they? So you find them now and you'll find them later, probably. Or
yeah, you'll notice now that all the burrs are open. And all we need is a little wind. And if you get a wind, they're all down. And then that's the end of it.
Do you have any idea how many nuts you get per tree or anything like that?
Well, I know that I have gathered 650 pounds of nuts in 1 year. But
that's a lot of nuts.
Half of them. The squirrels got the other half. But yeah, we did get that many. And in fact, that year we had so many orders we couldn't fill them. Yeah, we picked every nut we could find.
Do you think that most of the orders were for research purposes, or are there still people that are roasting them and selling them for delicacy?
Yeah, during that time, there was about half of the people were just buying them to eat, and the rest were for research. And then, of course, the nurseries were planting them.
Well, I read in the information there that they used to, back in the early days, they used to use the nuts for they grind them up for flour.
Yep, they used to. Yeah, they made some sort of a flour out of my mother. In fact, used to grind them up, and she'd put them in stuffing for turkeys. Excellent. Yeah. Well,
it said they even made some like cakes and pastas and things like that, and bread, from the chestnut. They're high apparently in carbohydrate. Yeah,
high in carbohydrates and very low in oil or low in fat. I guess it's the lowest of any nut in fat.
Hey Phil, it appears your dog has found some American chestnut.
Yes, he loves this grove. This is his. He eats those quite regular. I don't know if that's the best thing. As you notice, he's getting to be a pretty good-sized dog. I don't know if that's the best for him or not, but he sure loves them.
He don't shell them or anything, does he?
Nah, he chomps them up. He grinds them up and swallows the whole thing.
Does he eat much dog food at home?
Yeah, he eats that too.
The wildlife that are in here, the deer and the squirrels and whatever comes in, Do they kind of eat the same way? Do they just chomp up the whole nut with the hard covering and all?
Squirrels are pretty good. They'll take the nut out of the shell and eat it. Raccoons, they'll chomp it just about like that dog is doing. And then you can always tell a raccoon because he's got little sharp teeth like needles, and he'll poke holes in the shells, but he'll spit the shell out, as will a deer.
Do you like the nuts?
Oh yeah, they're real good. You want to leave them set for a while because they get a lot sweeter if they're sit around for a week or two. There's some sugars that start coming out in it then.
Well, Philip, it looks as though Wade is kind of filming some of the nuts that have fallen down, and before the ladies get here to pick them up. So, kind of explain the scene there.
Yeah, that's kind of how it works out. You see that most of the time there'll be 3 or 4 nuts in a group that fall because they all seem to fall at the same time out of the burr, and then the burr falls. But like this year, like I said before, there's too many burrs have fallen. It makes picking really hard.
And how many nuts are there normally in a burr, or is that kind of variable?
Well, and normally there's 3. Sometimes there are 4, but normally there's 3. And when there's 4, there's usually 1 or 2 that aren't developed. But when there's 3, they're usually all 3 of them have developed just fine. And speaking of burrs, when I used to have more orders for these things than we have now, I used to hire some of the neighbor kids to come over and pick. And once in a while, they'd get hit in the back by a burr, and that hurts. And I said, hey, when anybody that gets hit by a burr, just let me know and I'll give you a candy bar. And one of the young boys said, which tree do they fall off of the most?
You just made a comment. You don't sell as many as you used to sell these nuts. How long have you been selling the nuts?
Wow, yeah, at least 50 years if you count my dad in on it too. But we here have gone probably 40 years that we've been selling them. And my theory is that in 40 years that people probably have planted their own trees by now, and they're harvesting nuts off of the trees that we sent the nuts to them. They plant them. They got nuts of their own, and that's why the sales are down.
And you mentioned they've been here for making studies. Do you ever get any reports from these people, like this guy in Purdue, or I know Missouri and out east there, all these different research people that are trying to develop a blight resistance? Do you get any reports from them? Because very likely they're using your trees here, which escape the blight, in their research.
The research is ongoing yet, and they did promise me though that they were going to send me results, but they, like I said, they only check the trees about once every 5 years, so it's going to be a long time before they're going to have some results on that.
Well, Phil, we'll kind of walk through your grove here. You mentioned that are these still some of the big trees that Mr. Beardsley planted?
Yep, you can see them. They run east and west here. There's probably, I think, 15 or 16 of them. And yep, those are all the originals.
Did he plant any other place?
I think he did, but he didn't plant many because I have 3 of them out in my walnut grove, and I got 1 down here on the corner, and I've got a couple of them over in that grove over there of pine trees. So I think he must have had a couple left because they're big.
They're big like these are, then. Mm-hmm. See, one thing we didn't ask you is where are you located here? Where are you located?
I'm south of Galesville a little bit, and 6 miles south I'm on County Trunk M and South Street, and I'm east of Trempealeau about 3 miles.
And if anybody, how do you sell your chestnuts? How do you sell them?
Well, mostly I mail them out. People send in orders, and I mail them. I charge $8 a pound plus shipping. And
how many nuts are in a pound?
Well, there's about 140 to 150. I have to bend over 140 times to get those. But yeah, or I would sell them. If anybody wants them, they can look me up here. As long as they're local people, that's just great. But people that are from other states, I get a little bit leery.
Yeah, because of the blight
Yeah.
hazard.
Yep.
Now, do you sell them on the internet or any other way?
Yes. My son's got some on eBay right now. So, yeah, we run them out that way, too.
And do you have any internet connection as far as a website or anything?
No, I don't have I don't have a website personally, but I do have a representative out east that does have one on her website. So she's got my name on there for reference.
Do you get some response through the website and eBay?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. There's quite a few, actually. There used to be a lot of them would from the eBay and from the website, but like I say, I think people have grown their own because it's been really getting slow.
Well, this is really a rare opportunity for us to see these original trees, 136 years old. They're walking through here, and your father planted the trees on the left. Now there's a tree up ahead of us here that looks like it's there's something wrong there with that tree. It's what happened?
Definitely. That tree was struck by lightning, and then two here too that are together that are dead. That one's still alive, but it's in kind of poor shape. But these two died, which I'm going to cut down this fall and try and make some lumber out of them.
Well, they say high things attract lightning, so these are, they're up in the air, maybe 80 feet or more.
Yeah, they and when it hits, you know it.
Yeah. So this one here, they're tough trees, aren't they? Now that looks like it's been hurt seriously, that tree over there, but yet you can see it's still green, leaves are growing and so forth. Yeah. And so you think that's going to make it?
Oh, sure. Yeah, they're tough. That tree was split right down the middle, and the top broke off in a wind, and yet it just keeps going. All it needs is the outer bark, and it keeps going. They're tough.
Do you do any special, anything special out here as far as fertilization or throwing some fertilizer around the trees, or I guess you control the weeds by the lawnmower the way it looks?
Yeah, we don't have to fertilize or anything like that. Someone said that the quality of the soil here is quite sandy, and they said that was just ideal. They don't like a lot of water, so drainage is really good.
What do you have a son or something who's going to take over when you decide to take it easy? And
in fact, my son has taken over, and I just help out because he has a full-time job and I'm retired, so I get to come out here and pick the nuts and help him out that way. Yeah,
it's sure a nice thing, It's kind of nostalgic, It's a touching of the past, like you're walking through these woodland. The trees to the left here, they were planted by you and your father,
Yeah.
And to think about these trees, and they're planted by in 1870, that's just amazing.
It is, and in fact, when we first came here, these trees are probably half this size. And we looked at them, we thought, well, isn't that, a magnificent tree? And then to find out that they were actually American chestnuts was really something else.
Well, Phil, you're going to show us how to cut a chestnut.
Yes.
Be careful.
Yes. You don't have to worry too much because the husk is really not very thick. You notice here it just peels right off. In fact, you can do this with your fingernail too. But you just peel it back, and it's got that nice white meat in it. Like I said once before, if you wait about a week or two, they'll get a lot sweeter. But they're pretty sweet right now.
You don't have to hit them with a hammer like a lot of nuts.
No, it's not like a walnut. There it is.
Now you mentioned
Wanna eat
something
it?
about that you can roast.
Yes.
walnut.
Now, if you roast the chestnut, you want to take it and put a little X with your knife right in the center, just like that. Because if you put it in the oven and you don't put the X in it, it explodes like popcorn, and it's pretty loud. Scary. Yep.
So tell us a little about the technique of roasting them. You put them in the oven?
Okay, you put them in the oven. You run the oven at about 420 degrees for about 10 minutes. And you put them in there with the X on them, and that's it. Then peel them out, and they get a little softer. They're very, very tasty. Or you can take and saute them in butter, slice them up a little bit, and then put a little butter on them and saute them. Excellent.
Well, I guess we'll have kind of the final wrap-up of our American Chestnut Nut Show with Phil Lunde here from rural Galesville. I'm kind of chewing on the one you just. It's good. It's good. They're good. I really like them. Phil, again, maybe you could give us your address, so in case anybody's interested in sampling a chestnut, they'd come over, give you a call or something. Maybe your address and your telephone number.
Sure. I'd be Phil Lunde, W20868 South Street in Galesville, 54630.
45630.
54630. Yep. And then my phone number is 608-534-6171.
Maybe repeat that too.
Okay, 608-534-6171.
So if you want a real delicacy, I can't even say that, from a bygone era, chestnuts, and they're good. They're very good. And we're standing, as we close the show, in front of one of the 4 top size chestnut trees, the largest chestnut trees in Wisconsin, and Phil tells me maybe in the United States.
That's true. I've had people tell me that know their trees, and said that as far as they know, that these are the largest in the United States.
We've had a very, very interesting show. We're kind of lucky we caught this fall of the year, so we caught you guys picking chestnuts off from the ground. It was really a treat to be here. We enjoyed ourselves. Wade and I really appreciate your time. I know you're a busy guy. And is there anything we may have missed?
Boy, I think you covered things really well. I appreciate that.
Well, if you think we covered it adequately, we really enjoyed it. It's a real treat, I think, for our audience to see what we've seen with you today. It's really a treasure here in Trempealeau County that I don't think very many people know about. And with that, I guess we'll see you at the next Discover Trempealeau County show very soon.